Chapter 2591. No one would admit that their child was a demon. Chen Zhao could understand it as a parent's desire to protect their child. After all, Chen Zhao was a father too. However, this was definitely not the time to talk about love. You guys didn't call me here to talk about parenting, right? It's inside, Dahlia said. When Chen Zhao entered the house, he didn't feel anyone else's presence. Chen Zhao turned around and saw that the young couple, Daily Moore, and Nawat Singh had followed them in. Where are they? The young couple gulped. The young woman took out a bronze key. The bronze key was clearly quite old. It was mottled with rust, but one could still tell that it was exquisitely made. After all, even in modern times, it wasn't easy to carve complicated patterns on a bronze key that was less than 2 millimeters in diameter. The young woman brought Chen Zhao to the basement. There was another door in the basement. Chen Zhao frowned. Chen Zhao realized that his little world seemed to be blocked by this door. Even the entire wall was blocked by something. The young woman walked to the door with the bronze key. Then she looked back at Chen Zhao. Do you really want to open it? Clearly, the woman was terrified by her son. Open it, Chen Zhao said. Of course, if you need, you can use this key. The young woman finally mustered her courage and opened the door. Instantly, the aura from hell spread out. It was a deep space. Even if the door was opened, Chen Zhao's little world couldn't expand inside. I didn't expect there to be such a big space down here. Your interests are really unique. Chen Zhao glanced at the young couple. We didn't build it, Olette said. We just bought it 2 weeks ago. Oh, it's not cheap, right? In fact, the price of this villa is 20% lower than the normal price. And the environment and location are excellent. The bank is eager to sell this property. So they even provided us with a low-interest loan. We thought that we were lucky. But now it seems that the bank also realized that there was something wrong with this villa. So they sold it to us at the lowest price. Didn't you investigate before buying it? Yes, Olette said. Olette said, the owner of this house was accused of child abduction and murder. At least 6 children went missing here. But only the body of 1 child was found. At this point, Olette's expression was very unnatural. However, the police found 6 children's hair and some blood in this house. What about the original owner of this villa? The death penalty and a long-abandoned poison was used as a means of execution, Dahlia said. In the past, the United States used cyanide to execute prisoners on death row. This was a highly toxic substance, not the kind that would cause instant death. Only 0.06 grams was needed to cause severe poisoning symptoms. Those who were poisoned could be said to have been tortured to the extreme, dying in a drug reaction that lasted for several hours. Later, the death penalty was abolished because it was too cruel. Is that necessary? Chen Zhao frowned. A stable society rarely changes its laws or changes its behavior for some reason. This was a case from 5 years ago. At the time, it was a sensation. Although all kinds of evidence showed that the children had died in his hands. Other than the body of the child that was found, the bodies of the other children were not found, and he was still unwilling to confess. Even so, it doesn't seem necessary, right? Do you know where the child's body was found? Chen Zhao thought for a moment, and then shook his head. No. In his study, right in the middle of the room. Soaked in formalin, her organs removed. She's a girl less than 5 years old, Daily Moore said. Chen Zhao's expression changed slightly. When we bought this house, we only heard that someone had died here. We didn't know much about it. So you moved in. Actually, it wasn't their fault. With a cheap house, normal people wouldn't consider too many precautions that were beyond common sense. After we moved in, nothing happened in the first week. But one night, when Neil was eating dinner, he suddenly vomited. What he vomited wasn't food, but an indescribable white substance. We were scared and hurriedly sent him to the hospital. But the results showed that everything was normal. At the same time, we sent his vomit for testing. The results were very strange. The white substance was a mixture of liquid, protein, and tissue cells. It was like he ate a living thing and then vomited it out, Chen Zhao said. The couple nodded heavily, but their expressions were very unnatural. But there was no tissue structure. The testing was also very strange. They couldn't find out what kind of organism the cells belonged to. And then, Neil's behavior became more and more strange, especially at night. We often heard strange sounds. Chun Zhao listened to the couple's narration, like he was listening to a horror story. The development was also like a horror story. The child called Neil became more and more abnormal. He did things that scared the couple. For example, he killed Jerry, who'd grown up with Neil. Another example was the destruction of all the furniture and decorations in his own room. Moreover, what he had done was not something a child could do. The day before things went completely out of control, Delamore visited Olette and found out what had happened to him. That night, Dahlia Moore brought Navats Singh over. At first, Navats thought that Neil was possessed by a demon. However, after 2 rounds, he realized that little Neil wasn't possessed by a devil. He was a demon. Navats Singh's magic injured Neil. The blood on Neil's body turned milky white. Just as Navats was about to subdue Neil, he suddenly exploded with even more power. He injured Navats Singh and escaped through the door. Just then, Chun Zhao saw a 7 or 8-year-old boy standing in the darkness opposite the door. The boy was staring at the people outside without blinking. This youth was obviously little Neil. However, Neil had a chilling smile on his face at the moment. Chapter 2592. Little Neil was less than 20 meters away from Chun. However, Chun's little world was obstructed by these short 20 meters. Chun Feng raised his finger, and a black ball condensed between his fingers. He casually pointed at Neil, and the black ball shot out towards him. However, the black ball suddenly disappeared in the middle of its flight. Jen was surprised. Just as Jen was about to step through the door, Navats pulled him back. "Don't go in. It's very scary inside. I feel like my mana has been contaminated. Every bit of mana I use brings me one step closer to the darkness." Chun was no stranger to this. This was the power of hell. In fact, the aura of hell here was even stronger than that of the demonic island. This place wasn't as big as Demon Island, and it wasn't filled with demons like Demon Island. However, the environment here was truly like hell. "What's up there?" Just then, Madame Olette pointed at the ceiling and exclaimed. Above their heads, there was a layer of film-like substance. The thin film spread out from the door and covered the entire ceiling of the basement. "What the hell is that?" Olette's face was also filled with terror. Jen was also confused. This was clearly not a naturally occurring substance. These thin films were releasing an aura filled with the smell of sulfur. It was as if this thing had turned this place into hell. And this thing seemed to be expanding. At this moment, everyone realized that the ground had become sticky. The ground that was originally covered with concrete had now turned into a swamp. The concrete floor turned to sludge. Following that, terrifying monsters began to crawl out from within. These monsters were all strangely shaped. Some had slender bodies, while others had 2 legs on the left and 1 on the right. Some had 2 heads, while others had eyes all over their heads and bodies. They looked like something that had crawled out of an abstract painting by Picasso. That kind of asymmetrical feeling was very uncomfortable. Owlette and his wife screamed in fear. With a wave of his hand, a dozen or so black balls shot out. The abstraction-type monsters were blasted into pieces by Chun Fan. However, these abstract monsters did not have any substantial lethality. At least, Chun didn't sense any threat from them. They were more like the physical manifestation of some kind of power. Chun looked at little Neil, who had been standing there the entire time. Little Neil had a strange smile on his face. There was no innocence, nor was it pure evil. Anyway, that kind of smile made people feel uncomfortable. Jen grabbed a black ball. With a flick of his finger, the black ball flew out. But the black sphere disappeared again, just like Jen's first attack. However, although the black ball had disappeared from Chen's sight, Chen could not see it. However, when Chun had created the black ball, he had added dark magma. Therefore, no matter where the black ball disappeared or went, Chun would be able to sense it, unless the black sphere was blocked by a different dimension. However, Chun could still clearly feel the presence of the black ball. In other words, the black sphere was still there, and had not truly disappeared. However, Chun couldn't be sure where the black ball had gone. Chun had an idea. He looked back at Violet and his wife. "Do you mind if I tear down your house?" The couple was dumbfounded. They did not understand what Chen meant. Chen, we're about to lose our lives. How can we care about other things? The most important thing right now is to think of a way to escape. We can talk about other things later. Dalymore's words were not directed at Chen. Instead, she was reminding the couple. Mr. Chen, Dalymore is right. The most important thing right now is to escape. Then I don't have to worry about anything. Hundreds of small black balls appeared around Jen. These black balls weighed anywhere from a few thousand to tens of thousands of tons. Chen could lift a black ball weighing 10 million tons, with his little heaven and earth. However, he could easily create and control hundreds of black balls that were hundreds or thousands of times smaller. Chen waved his hand and hundreds of black balls shot at little Neil. However, the hundreds of black balls disappeared again, just like before. The next moment, Chen snapped his fingers. In an instant, all the black balls that were lost in the unknown area were devoured and exploded. Every single one of these black balls was extraordinarily powerful. Even the weakest one was several times more powerful than a grenade. Thousands of tons of air was compressed into a ball, with a diameter of 3 to 4 centimeters, and released instantly. The impact it caused was definitely more terrifying than a grenade. Although the two energy release methods were different. One was physical energy, the other was a chemical reaction. The effect was the same. They both produced an impact through the instantaneous release of energy. The weakest one was several times more powerful than a grenade. The stronger ones, weighing tens of thousands of tons, were even more terrifying. When all the small black balls exploded in an instant, the black balls exploded. Mr. and Mrs. Aulette, Dahlia Moore, and Nawats Hingis all looked up. They saw that the ceiling above them had disappeared. Not only had the ceiling disappeared, but the entire villa had also disappeared. A terrifying air current howled above their heads. As expected, Chen had already guessed it. Now he was even more certain of his guess. Nawat Singh had long known how terrifying Chen was. After all, she had experienced it herself. Thus her reaction was the calmest. The couple were ordinary people to begin with. They had been frightened out of their wits. They had no idea what had happened. Without the villa, Chen Zhao could finally feel the space around him more directly. The small world that had been surrounded by darkness suddenly became clear under the starry sky. Chen's little heaven and earth had completely expanded. Chen was no longer suppressed. He was no longer confined to a small space. Chen shot out another black ball. When the black ball was 10 meters away from little Neil, it suddenly made a turn and shot into the sky at a right angle. Although Chen's little heaven and earth had expanded, it still couldn't approach Neil. It was as if there was also a powerful little heaven and earth in front of him. Chen's little heaven and earth couldn't advance at all. This was definitely not a power that a newly awakened youth could possess and control. There was a powerful soul in Neil's body. Get out of that child's body. Just then Neil spoke. Do you know who I am? To be precise, it was the soul in his body. No, Chen said calmly. You don't have to tell me your identity. I'm not interested. Chapter 2593. Chen Zhao shook his arm, and a neutron star condensed in his right palm. At the same time, little Neil also attacked. A black cloud appeared behind little Neil, as gigantic red claws extended out from the black cloud. Chen Zhao's right hand was condensing the neutron star, while his left finger pressed down. Instantly, the pressure in the small world before him increased by 100 times. The red claws were pressed to the ground and shattered. However, the flesh crushed by the giant red claw was squirming. It even showed signs of reassembling. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. 1,000 times the pressure. Chen Zhao's left finger pressed down again. Instantly, a terrifying force crushed the flesh on the ground. The flesh and blood were directly compressed to the point of separation. This wasn't enough. Chen Zhao's finger kept pressing down. It was like a huge hammer pounding the flesh into paste. The terrifying force kept hitting the ground. The flesh had already turned into paste. Just then, Chen Zhao realized that his small world was absorbing the flesh. It was very, very weak but very clear. After absorbing the flesh, the small world started condensing life force. Huh? Chen Zhao was surprised. Was this the real use of the small world? The paste that Chen Zhao had pounded gradually lost its vitality as the small world kept absorbing. Little Neil didn't notice anything strange. He was still summoning the giant red claws. Chen Zhao's lips twitched. His eyes were filled with mockery. But look at Daily Moore, Not Sing and the owlets. Chen Zhao and Little Neil were clearly engaged in an extremely dangerous battle of magical powers. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, seemed to be at a disadvantage. Chen Zhao's attacks weren't the kind that could be seen. Chen Zhao only controlled the small world to crush the giant red claws. Little Neil's attacks seemed more threatening. He seemed to be suppressing Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was struggling to hold on. The amount of life force he could absorb was very little, but it was better than nothing. The giant red claws weren't pure living creatures. They were probably only formed by Little Neil's power. Chen Zhao thought, what if they're real living creatures? And what if they're humans? Little Neil's expression turned serious. Clearly, he realized that Chen Zhao wasn't an ordinary opponent. Just then, Chen Zhao's neutron star was complete. Chen Zhao pushed neutron star out. Even though he had yet to touch Little Neil, he could still sense the terrifying power contained within the seemingly insignificant, or even insignificant black ball. Little Neil's eyes widened as he raised his palms with all his might. Ah! Little Neil let out a low growl. It was as if he was lifting something heavy. The small world in front of him also began to distort. At the same time, he could have resisted Chen Zhao's small world. But to block Chen Zhao's neutron star, he had to concentrate the power of his domain. This caused the invasion of Chen Zhao's small world. Chen Zhao realized that Neil's little world seemed to be distorted. He recalled that he was able to change the trajectory of his black ball at a right angle. Now that he thought about it, he finally understood what Neil's little world was for. If Chen Zhao's little world had no element, it was the purest form of power. Then, Little Neil's pocket world was to create distorted passageways. Just like Chen Zhao's previous attack, a small black ball shot toward Neil. Through spatial distortion, Little Neil had directly caused the black ball to bend. To the black ball, it had been flying in a straight line all along. But to outsiders, it looked like it was making a turn. However, there was a limit to the power of spatial distortion. The black ball was like a piece of paper, but neutron star was like a steel plate. The difficulty of playing with it was naturally much higher. Suddenly, a malicious smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. Just as he was about to release neutron star, he suddenly thought of something. Chen Zhao retracted his palms. Little Neil roared angrily. When everyone looked at Little Neil, they realized that his body seemed to have bent. In fact, because everyone's vision had been distorted, Little Neil's body also became distorted when they looked at him. But under Little Neil's forceful spatial distortion, neutron star was finally sent to the sky. Neutron star shot into the sky. Boom! Without any source of light, it was like thunder. At the same time, the clouds in the sky were swept away. Instantly, the entire night sky cleared up. Everyone looked at the star-filled sky in shock. It was unprecedentedly dazzling and eye-catching. The owlets, Daily Moore, and Nawat Singh were all stunned by this shocking scene. The entire sky above Los Angeles turned bright. A huge hole appeared in the clouds in the sky. Chen Zhao started walking toward Little Neil. Because Chen Zhao's small world had completely invaded Little Neil's. So he didn't need to worry about Little Neil's counterattack anymore. With a serious expression, Little Neil took 2 steps back. Stop! To move neutron star away. Little Neil had used up a lot of energy. Now, he couldn't even let his small world fight Chen Zhao's. You can't stop me. If you come near me again, I'll kill this host, Little Neil roared. Chen Zhao stopped. The owlets panicked. Mrs. Owlet shouted. What do you want? We promise you, don't hurt our child. Chen Zhao didn't speak, although he didn't want to let this powerful soul go. But he could understand the couple's choice. If he put himself in their shoes, he would make the same choice. After all, his child was in someone else's hands. In the end, it was the Owlets who had invited him. So there was no need for him to continue being the bad guy. But this didn't mean that he could just watch the powerful soul that had taken over Little Neil's body escape. I want you to leave immediately. Now. The couple looked at Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao stood where he was without moving. Sir. Chen Zhao glanced at the couple. If you back off, your child will be doomed. He'll kill your child's soul, and then reconstruct his body. Of course, if you want me to leave now, don't come looking for me in the future. But little Neil is still in his hands. Chen Zhao licked his lips. If you leave this to me, I have a way to force his soul out. Haha, maybe you can make my soul leave this body, but you can't stop me from killing this body. Then let's make a bet. Chen Zhao looked at the boy's appearance calmly. Kill this child. This is your only chance. Then I'll kill your soul. Chapter 2594. If he killed the child, his soul would lose its attachment. By then, Chen Zhao would have nothing to worry about. But facing Chen Zhao's aggressiveness, the powerful soul in the child's body was very passive. However, Chen Zhao had already expressed his attitude. If he didn't leave something behind today, then he definitely wouldn't be able to escape. He would either leave the child's body or his soul. But if he gave up this body, he would lose his last bit of support. After all, there was no way to restrain Chen Zhao. By then, his life and death wouldn't be up to him. The owlets looked nervously at the two people confronting each other. It wasn't that they didn't know what was good for them. They knew that not speaking now was the best choice. The situation here wasn't something they could participate in at all. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about risking his life, but the power that Chen Zhao had displayed was clearly stronger than his. And now, his little world had been completely taken over by Chen Zhao. Now he could only hide in his little world. He wouldn't let Chen Zhao succeed so easily. He had predicted that this was the end of days. There was almost no one he could fight against. Even in the prosperous magic era, there were only a few people who could fight against him. So he was confident that reviving in this era was the safest and safest. Then, he could slowly wait for the next prosperous magic era to arrive. In this era, he had enough time to accumulate wealth, resources, and manpower. He was already very familiar with this. He had experienced the end of days 3 times. The cycle of each spiritual tide was 500 years. In other words, he had experienced a span of 1,500 years. Of course, this didn't mean that he was 1,500 years old. Instead, he would wake up at a specific time each time. He was very accurate at this time. Every time, he would occupy a youth's body and use a small amount of time to recover his cultivation to prolong his life. Then, he would occupy resources and wait for the spiritual tide to arrive. That way, he could get twice the results with half the effort during the prosperous magic era. The strong people who rose in the prosperous magic era couldn't surpass him either. After all, others rose with the era. But he could reach the peak at the beginning of the prosperous magic era. The first 3 times had been smooth, but he didn't expect this. He had just revived and already encountered such a troublesome problem. The man before him was even stronger than he had been at his peak. He had met all sorts of geniuses. Some geniuses could even threaten him. But even a genius needed time to accumulate. However, the man in front of him was unbelievably powerful. And he was very young. Chen Zhao made him feel extremely threatened. After all, he had originally thought that there were no experts in this era. Even if there were, they would be very old. They must have started cultivating during the middle and late stages of the spiritual energy tide. Therefore, they didn't have much time left. Basically, it was impossible to hold out until the next spirit chi tide arrived. Although the bodies he occupied were usually those of youths, without any magic power. However, his realm was there, so his strength recovered very quickly. He had only occupied this body for a few days, but he had already recovered 70% of his strength. However, this was basically all the power he could recover. If he wanted to increase his strength, he wouldn't have to recover, but cultivate. At the same time, because he had slept and cultivated his soul 3 times, it had been close to 500 years. This was also why Chen Zhao felt that his soul was very powerful. Chen Zhao and little Neil were in a stalemate. The powerful soul in little Neil's body couldn't escape, but it couldn't beat Chen Zhao either. Moreover, his soul power had to recover to its previous realm before he could take over another body. Otherwise, even if his soul took over another body, it would be greatly damaged. This was because every time he took over someone else's body, he would sacrifice a portion of his power so that he could quickly fuse with the body. But now, he had already sacrificed a portion of his soul power. But before it could completely fuse with the body, Chen Zhao had come to him. If he wanted to take over a new body next time, he had no more soul power to sacrifice, so he could only sacrifice the essence of his soul. Suddenly, little Neil felt something appear in his little world. However, because of the interference of Chen Zhao's little world, he couldn't clearly feel what it was. Little Neil immediately tensed up. He didn't see anything in his field of vision, but he knew that Chen Zhao definitely wouldn't coexist peacefully with him. Chen Zhao must be doing something that he didn't know. Just then, a smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. It's here. Little Neil's body tensed up instantly. The owlets also became very nervous. They seemed to have seen something too. Just then, little Neil saw a black ball appear in front of him. Chen Zhao's little world had already completely invaded little Neil's little world. Therefore, he could condense the black ball at any location within the range. Little Neil knew the terrifying power of these black balls. Did he want to completely destroy the boy's body? Damn, this guy is a demon. Little Neil instantly cast a powerful magic shield on himself. At the same time, the black ball exploded. Boom! With a loud bang, little Neil's magic shield received a huge impact. However, little Neil felt that the might was a little weaker. It wasn't as strong as he imagined. Did he use up his magic too? Or did he have other plans? Little Neil's expression grew more and more serious. Just then, little Neil felt something burrowing out from under his feet. Little Neil immediately rose into the air. A smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. Little Neil suddenly felt his head hit something. He looked up and saw a black substance. The black substance was covering his head. It was waiting for him to crash into it. Damn! I was tricked. Only then did little Neil realize that both the black ball and the thing hidden in the ground were just a feint. The real killer move was the black substance. It was precisely because his little world's senses were messed up. As a result, he didn't even know what had invaded his domain. He didn't even know where it was. At the same time, the dark lava poured into little Neil's mouth. Little Neil! The owlets exclaimed. They could only watch as their child was swallowed by the dark lava. But they couldn't do anything. Come out! Chen Zhao let the dark lava pour into little Neil's mouth, nose, and ears. However, Chen Zhao didn't plan to show this scene to the owlets. Chapter 2595. In the churning dark lava, the powerful soul escaped from Neil's body. Roar! A humanoid figure flipped out of the dark lava. However, this figure was completely covered in dark lava. Since you want me to leave that body, then give me your body. The powerful soul ignored the dark magma on its body and launched its final attack on Jen. However, Chen didn't even give him a chance to get close. A wave of dark magma converged and smashed the powerful soul into pieces. The powerful soul was covered by the dark lava again. You damned bastard! Chen was still expressionless, ignoring the powerful soul's curses. However, the dark lava suddenly ignited with red nirvana flames. Ah! The powerful soul cried out in pain. The dark lava with nirvana flames suddenly shot out a sharp spike, piercing through the soul's chest. The soul struggled even more frantically. Chen raised his eyebrows. A strange feeling filled his heart. Compatible enemy. This was a long-lost feeling. Back when Chen activated the soul key, the first compatible enemy he encountered was the black dragon in the Tower of Trials. The so-called compatible enemy was an old enemy. What kind of enemy was a good enemy? Of course it was a dead enemy. Actually, they didn't have any grudges. However, they were compatible enemies. This also meant that they were destined to be enemies. If he let him go today, they would become mortal enemies in the future. Chen devoured the soul fragment he tore out of the soul's chest. Countless knowledge and memories surged into Chen's mind. However, this soul fragment was too small. Many of the memories were very fragmented. There wasn't a complete memory at all. But at least Chen knew the name of this powerful soul. Adu Rainster from England. The first group of exiles on the American continent. Of course, rather than being exiled, it was better to say that he was self-exiled. However, that was all Chen Zhao knew. Just then, Adu Rainster launched another counterattack. Let's die together. Adu Rainster seemed to feel that Chen's attack was damaging his soul. This made him want to die. Bright red flames ignited on Adu Rainster's body. It was even redder and more shocking than Nirvana flames. It was the fire of life. A flame at the cost of life. Meanwhile, Adu Rainster had forced the dark lava away. Adu Rainster didn't choose to flee this time. Instead, he charged at Chun. The formless Adu Rainster actually engaged in melee combat with Chun Play. He swung his fist at Chun. Although Adu Rhinestone was in soul form, his soul form was 4 meters tall, more than twice the size of Jen's. However, Chun Zhao was curious as to what the point of such an attack was. Therefore, Chun did not dodge at all. But when the punch landed on Chen's body, Jen's head spun, and he staggered a few steps back. At the same time, Jen's soul was almost smashed out of his body. The next moment, Chen's soul returned to his body. Chapter 2596. In everyone's eyes, Chun Zhao was the scariest demon. Demon power. Chun Zhao discovered something from Yedu Rainster's soul fragment. His power was very similar to Chun Zhao's. They both came from hell and demons. However, he was very different from Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao's power belonged to him, but Yedu Rainster's power was borrowed from a demon. He had to return the borrowed power. When Chun Zhao devoured half of Yedu Rainster's soul, a magic formation suddenly appeared on the ground where Yedu Rainster was lying. A demonic hand reached out from the formation and grabbed Yedu Rainster's soul. The demonic hand emanated a terrifying aura. Even if it was just a hand, Chun Zhao's eyes flashed with displeasure. As he grabbed Yedu Rainster with one hand, he smashed the demonic hand with the other. The demonic hand was smashed into pieces. Who is it? The magic formation suddenly turned into an abyss. A terrifying and angry voice spread from the depths of the abyss. Fuck you. Chun Zhao held Yedu Rainster's soul and floated in the air. He retorted at the owner of the voice in the abyss. The owner of that demonic hand was a great lord-class demon. But so what? Just a little bit of power was already the limit of a demon lord. This bit of power wasn't even enough to scratch an itch for Chun Zhao. Even if his real body could come to the human world, Chun Zhao wouldn't be afraid of him. Human, I'll remember your aura. Just you wait. The greater demon overlord could only say some harsh words and not continue to infiltrate his power. He could also feel Chun Zhao's aura. Chun Zhao was at the same level as him. Unless his true body appeared, no matter how much power he used, it would all be useless. The greater demon overlord also understood that the two sides were separated by a world. Thus, they couldn't do anything to each other. Now that he was on Chun Zhao's main battlefield, he was even more helpless. The so-called threatening words were just giving himself a way out when he couldn't do anything. Chun Zhao glanced at the half-dead Yedu Rainster in his hand. Most of his soul had been eaten by Chun Zhao. At the moment, his mind wasn't clear. Every time Chun Zhao bit off a piece of the soul, he gained more. Unlike when he absorbed the black dragon's soul, he only obtained a small number of fragments. This time, Chun Zhao's devouring method was more direct. As a result, the knowledge gained would also increase. Chun Zhao had a rough understanding of Yeda's power. Yedu Rainster had been a magician for hire in his early years. Not to mention leading a great battle. Every time he went on the battlefield, he was surrounded by danger. However, his luck was not bad. He picked up a ring with a demonic mark. The original owner of this ring had a contract with that greater demon overlord. It was a very simple contract, similar to the modern usury. The greater demon lord would lend its power to the contractor in exchange for a soul sacrifice. Of course, the sacrifices were all other people's souls. However, the souls sacrificed each time were only counted as interest. Yedu Rainster was indeed a capable person. His predecessor was abandoned because he was unable to repay the interest of the previous greater demon overlord. However, Yedu Rainster had maintained this state for 1,500 years, and half of that time had been spent in slumber. Under such circumstances, he could still repay the interest of the greater demon overlord. One could imagine how many souls he had sacrificed in the past. Even the greater demon overlord admired Yedu Rainster. He felt that Yedu was a promising talent. Every time Yedu Rainster obtained a new body, he would receive a gift from the greater demon overlord, giving him a longer life than normal people. Of course, this admiration came with a price. Yedu Rainster's conflict with the greater demon overlord became even more complicated. The greater demon overlord could even sense Yeta Rainster's condition. For example, just now, Yeta Rainster's soul had been severely damaged. Using the contract, the greater demon overlord sent his power into the human world. He wanted to take back what Yeta Rainster owed him with interest. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be able to protect their spoils of war. Only Chen Zhao dared to face a greater demon overlord head-on. The magic formation gradually dissipated. Chen Zhao looked at the incomplete soul in his hand. He didn't plan on letting Yeta Rainster go. As for Nawat Singh and Delamore, their senses were much more stimulated than the owlets. After all, the owlets had only felt the impact of their naked eyes. But the two of them were facing a terrifying pressure that seemed to be solid. Facing an enemy like that, they didn't even have the courage to resist. They couldn't shatter the demon's hand like Chen Zhao had. Chen Zhao was silent for a long time. He muttered the demon's name in his heart. Shang Kaslafar. It wasn't a good thing to be targeted by a greater demon overlord. Perhaps Shang Kaslafar thought that he couldn't enter hell. But that didn't mean he didn't want to take revenge. Perhaps he couldn't fight Chen Zhao head-on in the human world. But if he wanted to create some trouble for Chen Zhao, it wouldn't be a problem. Clearly, Shane didn't know that Chen Zhao remembered his vicious words. Chen Zhao had always adhered to the principle of never waiting for revenge. Moreover, he wanted to use Shane Kaslafar for a small experiment. After devouring Yeta Rainster's soul, Chen Zhao had a clearer understanding of Shane Kaslafar. Of course, Yeta Rainster was only Shane Kaslafar's second party. His understanding of Shane Kaslafar was very limited. Chen Zhao glanced at the owlets. Little Neil's body appeared in the dark lava. He was sound asleep. Little Neil was sent to the owlets. Zhang Tianyi's guess seemed to be very consistent with his own. You and I both know that the higher one's cultivation, the longer one's lifespan will be. However, the key question is, how is the process of transforming power into lifespan achieved? What you've discovered just proves that the process of transforming power into lifespan, although we haven't completely analyzed it, it has already taken us a big step forward. Zhang Tianyi paused for a moment, then continued. The flesh that your enemy summoned was made entirely out of mana, and didn't have any life force. However, your heaven and earth heavenly pattern was able to absorb it. This means that you weren't absorbing the life force of the flesh, but transforming it. You're already a big step ahead of the three of us. In fact, your progress is even faster than we imagined. In the next 100 years, you'll have enough time to become the world's top cultivator. And in the spiritual tide era after that, you'll be the best in the world. Zhang Tianyi's tone was a bit emotional, but also a bit envious. He wasn't envious of Chen Zhao's cultivation, but of his era. In the age of chaos, Chen Zhao's cultivation had almost reached the peak. His cultivation was enough for him to last until the spiritual tide era, and he even had a lot to spare. Moreover, with his surging life force, he didn't need to be like other cultivators of the same realm, who didn't dare to fight even when they were old. For example, the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Her cultivation was indeed the best in the world. But now she was like an ordinary old person. Even the slightest movement would hurt her muscles and bones. Every time she fought, she would use up a large amount of life force. To put it bluntly, the next 200 years would belong to Chen Zhao. And Chen Zhao wasn't just the best in terms of power. More importantly, he had thick skin and flesh. He had almost indestructible physical defense and terrifying magic resistance. This also eliminated the danger of him dying. Killing Chen Zhao was almost as difficult as destroying a modern country, and a country with nuclear weapons. After communicating with Zhang Tianyi, Chen Zhao suddenly felt happy. So he wasn't absorbing life force. Next, he would go to hell and kill the threat in the cradle. Chen Zhao took out another phone and called the handsome guy. Hi. The video call went through. Chen Zhao saw a battlefield, a terrifying one. It was a scene of billions of demons fighting against a terrifying dragon, while the handsome young man stood in the air. Chen Zhao remembered that terrifying dragon, ancestral dragon. He had been lucky enough to accept the handsome guy's invitation and ride on ancestral dragon once. For Chen Zhao back then and now, it was an extremely honorable thing. Rather than a battle, it was more like a one-sided massacre. Although there were countless of them, They were facing the most powerful dragon clan. Chapter 2598. In the blink of an eye, Chen had arrived in hell. The scene from the video was completely different from the feeling of being in a boundless battlefield. Even high up in the sky, Chen still couldn't see the end of the battlefield. Ancestral Dragon also sensed Chen's arrival. He still had some impression of this human. But to him, Chen was just a small interlude. It didn't affect his killing spree. Chen had an idea. Ancestral Dragon, do you still need these corpses? Why? Even if you use them as food, they're the most disgusting food, the handsome guy answered matter-of-factly. Do you need them? I'm not sure if I need them. The handsome guy gestured for Chen to go ahead. Chen landed on the battlefield. Even without Chen's control, the heavenly patterns in the small world were already absorbing the blood on the ground. Chen could feel that the small world was growing rapidly. The heavenly patterns in the small world were also flourishing. Chen was shocked. Why was the growth speed of the heavenly patterns faster than all the cultivation he'd done after activating them? One must know that his heavenly runes had been nurtured in the river diagram for several years at the very least. But in just a few minutes, Chen's heavenly patterns had at least doubled in size. After a closer look, Chen found the problem. Within the range of Chen's little world, a corpse caught Chen's attention. Even though the corpse was already dead, it was still emitting a powerful aura. It was the corpse of a greater demon lord. The greater demon lord's corpse wasn't very large, but the aura it emitted was terrifying beyond compare. No wonder. Chen's heart skipped a beat. Raising his hand, a wave of energy descended from the air and blasted the corpse of the greater fiend overlord. Flesh and blood splattered in an instant. Chen greedily absorbed the greater demon lord's power. Although the amount of life force he could produce wasn't much, compared to Chen's total life force, it was just a drop in the ocean. But the heavenly patterns in Chen's small world were flourishing. Compared to Ancestral Dragon, Chen was more like a trash picker. But Chen was very happy to pick them up. Just then, the handsome guy's voice reached Chen's ears. 1,000 miles ahead of you, there are 2 greater demon lords' corpses. Chen looked up at the handsome guy in the sky and nodded slightly. The value of the nearby greater demon overlord had basically been sucked dry by Chen. Chen Zhao ran straight to where the handsome guy was pointing. Although the corpses of the 2 greater demon overlords were inconspicuous, they were very easy to find. That was because they exuded an extraordinary aura. After absorbing the essence of the first great demon lord, Chen felt that the power of his little world had more than doubled. Rather than strength, it should be called growth. Chapter 2601. It took 50 minutes. Chen Zhao finally completed the meteorite. Then, he basically didn't need to do anything else. With the acceleration of gravity, the meteorite would have enough time to gain great kinetic energy before it hit the ground. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't just do nothing. Instead, he used all his strength to pull the meteorite down. This allowed the meteorite to gain more initial kinetic energy. Soon, Chen Zhao realized that he wasn't pulling the meteorite down anymore. Instead, he was being pressed down by the meteorite. The meteorite fell faster and faster. It was already heating up from the friction with the air. The speed of falling seemed to be beyond Chen Zhao's imagination. More accurately, it was out of Chen Zhao's control. What did it mean to fall from 300,000 meters in the sky? The potential energy from the acceleration of gravity was 1,000 times more destructive than something of the same mass falling from 30,000 meters. Plus, the power of Chen Zhao's small world had increased by 10 times. So, the meteorite's weight had also increased by more than 10 times. Chen Zhao cursed inwardly. He immediately used large amounts of gas to form a barrier around him. Chen Zhao wasn't sure if he could withstand such power if it hit the ground. But he had no way out now. Even if he wanted to give up, he couldn't stop. Colin stared at the sky. Suddenly, a meteorite appeared in everyone's vision. What's that? Colin pointed at the meteorite falling from the sky. It's that guy. He didn't escape. Shane Kazlak only saw a huge fireball. But he didn't sense the incoming danger. The fireball was indeed huge, but it wasn't enough to make him feel danger. He had the title of Lava Demon to begin with. His resistance to fire had also reached the extreme. After all, he could eat and drink in lava. Of course, his resistance to fire wasn't weak. So he didn't care too much about the huge fireball. As for the other demon lords, they didn't care too much either. They were stronger than Shane Kazrak, not weaker. Similarly, no one would be afraid of a mere fireball. Even if the fireball was ridiculously huge, some greater demon overlords cast a defensive barrier on themselves. Some relied on their powerful physical bodies and didn't care about what was falling. Only Coltrane, who had no way of knowing what was falling from the sky, but it definitely wasn't a fireball. After all, he had been paying attention to Chen Zhao in the sky. Chen Zhao had only been in the sky for around 50 minutes, and he had created a fireball to entertain everyone? Stop joking, no one's brain is flooded with water. So Colin silently used his strongest defense. However, he could not suppress the strong uneasiness in his heart. The falling speed of the fireball seemed to be a little unexpected. At this time, a greater demon overlord revealed a solemn expression. That spell seems very dangerous. No, that's not a fireball. These were all his spoils of war. Chen Zhao grinned. But just then, the ground not far in front of Chen Zhao protruded. A demon burrowed out. The demon did not seem to be injured. Then a white figure descended from the sky. Koling looked at Chen Zhao. He'd sensed danger just now. Therefore, he decisively flew up into the sky. Even though there was a similar impact in the sky, there was also the same impact in the sky. But the impact in the sky was clearly much weaker than on the ground. This also allowed Coltrane to escape death. Just then, a few more great demon lords appeared one after another. Perhaps because of this or that method, they didn't suffer any injuries, or they avoided the disaster with light injuries. Other than the heavily injured and dying lords, there were 8 great demon lords in total. These 8 greater demon overlords still had their full strength. By now, the 8 demon lords had surrounded Chen Zhao. They hadn't completely dispersed. Instead, they lingered nearby. Chen Zhao realized that his small world could absorb this power much more easily than before. Glancing at the 8 demon lords, Chen Zhao absorbed the power without batting an eyelid. After a short period of recuperation, the 8 greater demon overlords attacked once more. However, this time, Chen Zhao wasn't in a hurry to succeed. Instead, he focused all his attention on dodging their attacks. The saying that a prolonged defense would lead to a loss was also useful for Chen Zhao. Before long, Chen Zhao was hit consecutively. However, Chen Zhao didn't fight back because of this. Instead, he patiently stalled for time. These attacks weren't weak, but they weren't fatal. Chen Zhao needed time to absorb the remaining power of the demon lords in the air. His small world was growing silently. The 8 demon lords didn't notice anything different. They were still working together to attack Chen Zhao. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Hurry! Don't let him leave my magic array. The bow-wielding Great Lord bellowed. The strength-type demon lord stood in front of Chen Zhao. Don't even think about going anywhere. The strength-type demon lord roared, lowering his fists. But this time, Chen Zhao didn't choose to fight head-on. Instead, he took out the black trident the moment the strength-type demon lord came into contact with him. The strength-type demon lord raised his fist and smashed it at Chen Zhao. He clearly didn't realize that danger was approaching. Chen Zhao directly stabbed the black trident into the body of the strength-type demon lord. The demon lord's eyes widened, and he stared at the black trident in his chest in shock. Before he could react, Chen Zhao had already punched and crushed his head. He grabbed the body of the strength-type demon lord and stuffed it into his spatial ring. The remaining 6 demon lords were all enraged. Chapter 2604. They didn't understand how Chen had done it. He had killed a greater demon lord in an instant. But this made them feel a strong sense of danger. Chen didn't plan to stay any longer, even though he had devoured Shane Kazlak through the dark lava. Moreover, Shifeng had caught the demon lord off guard and killed the demon lord. But there were still 6 greater demon lords here. Every one of them was terrifyingly powerful. He could kill 2 in a row, but that didn't mean he still had a chance. Plus, if he continued to stay, he might not even be able to kill a single one. Instead, he would be killed. If it was a one-on-one, Chen was confident that he could kill any one of them. But they wouldn't give him such a chance. Even with the Black Trident, it would be difficult for Chen to have the same opportunity. The Black Trident would make them wary. But at the same time, it would make them greedy. Chen wouldn't give them such a chance. Chen glanced at his surroundings. The small world swept up the heavily injured and the corpses of the greater demon lords and ran away without any warning. The remaining 6 greater demon overlords looked at each other in confusion. None of them chased after Chen. After thinking for a while, they realized that it wasn't Chen who had killed the greater demon lord in an instant. It was the Black Trident in Chen's hand. That thing was indeed a supreme treasure, but it would probably be a death sentence. Plus, Chen wasn't a kind person. He would wait for them to kill him. This was an enemy even more ferocious than they were. None of them had the confidence to kill Chen. Plus, they didn't trust each other enough. Actually, if they had been willing to give up everything and cooperate with Chen wouldn't have been able to escape now. It was because they were wary and suspicious of each other. That was why Chen had the chance to counterattack and even break through their alliance. Chen didn't swagger away. Instead, he hid his aura and headed toward Obsidian City. This place was very far from Obsidian City. Along the way, Chen first killed the few dying demons and stored their corpses in his spatial ring. Otherwise, it wouldn't be convenient. After flying for a full 4 hours, Chen finally approached Obsidian City. Just then, he saw a huge figure appear in the distance. Chen immediately returned from his energy form to his physical form. Iris. Chen, it's you? Iris thought that it was an enemy. She could only sense a terrifying aura approaching, but she was unable to identify the other party. Now, she and Beelzebub Sophie were already frightened by the mere twang of a bow. Although they had just won a match not too long ago, they occupied the territories of the 3-headed devil and the red eagle, as well as a large amount of resources. But this also caused the wrath of their enemy King Alpha. Although the 2 of them were considered to be at the peak of the greater demon overlords, they were still inferior to the demon overlords. But it was impossible to resist the Alpha Demon King. The 30+ greater demon overlords under him could easily slaughter them. Iris, let me rest in the castle for a while, Chen said. Although he was in a good state now, the previous high-intensity battles still made his mind tense, and his body was not very comfortable. Iris nodded. Get on my back. Iris brought Chen into Obsidian Castle. Who summoned you? You seem to have just been through a battle. Where's Sophie? Some unfamiliar demons are approaching the border of our territory, Iris said. Sophie went to check the situation. She was the only one guarding Obsidian Castle now. This was why she was so nervous earlier. What's wrong with you? Chen took out his spoils of war. The corpses of greater demon overlords. Big ones, small ones, all of different shapes. Iris was shocked and took 2 steps back. Her eyes were filled with horror. I came to hell to find a greater demon overlord to solve some personal problems, but I accidentally barged into their gathering. After a fight, I killed a few and escaped. This is Shang Kazlak's Balrog sword. This is the helmet of the dead. It's from the Nether Tower. This is Morgate's head. How many greater demon overlords did you kill? I don't know the exact number, but my victory was very unexpected. In fact, they gathered together and didn't stop me from releasing my ultimate skill. That's why I succeeded. Chen was very sure that if they had stopped him from releasing his ultimate skill, the best outcome would have been for Chen to run away with his tail between his legs. Suddenly, Iris picked up a red token. Her expression changed drastically again. This is Demon King Alpha's Crimson Token? Iris thought that she had already seen a lot of things, but at this moment she really felt a chill. It could be said that she had watched Chen grow up step by step. She had never thought that one day, Chen would grow to where he was today. Perhaps Chen wasn't powerful enough for her to look up to, but Chen's results were definitely enough to shock her. What's this thing for? Wait, I'll tell Sophie to come back, Iris said solemnly. When Sophie discovered the signal sent by Iris, he thought that there was an enemy invasion in his territory. After all, he and Iris had agreed to use the signal only if there was a catastrophic problem in his territory. However, when Sophie returned, he found that Obsidian City was peaceful. There didn't seem to be any signs of war. Moreover, Iris's aura didn't seem to be in any danger. Beelzebub Sophie returned to Obsidian Castle. He immediately noticed that Chun was beside Iris. Chun, why are you here? Sophie, take a look at this. Iris handed the crimson token to Beelzebub Sophie. Chapter 2606. Just soak it. You just need to soak it. Of course, you can also drink it, but it doesn't taste very good. Moreover, it can be used repeatedly after a certain period of time. If you drink it, it can only be used once. Can I take it away directly? Chen Zhao asked. Of course. In fact, Fate Nitak had created this container for the sake of beauty and convenience. Other than making the divine power potion, Chen Zhao had to be perfect in other aspects. After taking the divine power potion, Chen Zhao bid farewell to Beelzebub Sophie and Iris. His time in hell had come to an end. Chen Zhao also brought some local specialties from hell back. When he returned to the human world, Chen Zhao received a call from Alex. Chun, where have you been these past 2 days? You weren't in the service area when I called you. I called Fei Lai, and she said you had something urgent, but she didn't tell me where you went. I thought you were kidnapped. Before going to hell, Chen Zhao had only told Fei Lai. Chen Zhao was about to explain when Alex interrupted him. But Alex interrupted him again. Forget it. But even if you're kidnapped, please let the kidnappers go or deal with it yourself. I have too many things on my hands right now. I don't have time to deal with such a small matter. Chen Zhao nodded. Is it a small matter to you that I was kidnapped? Everyone's time is precious. Are you willing to spend it on kidnappers? Or use it to make money? Fine. Compared to money, kidnapping is indeed a small matter. Chen Zhao shrugged. Why are you looking for me? It's about the contract between you and Ms. Jane Fankel. We've mostly settled it. Now we just need your signature. What time? It's best if it's now. Now. Don't you want to reschedule? I've already said that my time is precious. Your time is precious as well. Her time is just as precious. Fine. Now give me the address. Drive a good car to pick me up. I'll go with you. Oh, you have to change. Chen Zhao returned home. After changing, he drove a luxury car. Chen Zhao didn't really like driving his new Rolls-Royce Phantom. However, this car was indeed very suitable for decoration. Compared to a flashy supercar, a sedan was more suitable for a formal occasion. He'd gotten the latest Rolls-Royce Phantom not long ago. It was a gift from Amira. When Chen Zhao arrived at Alex's law firm, she even found one of her subordinates to be their driver for the time being. In Alex's words, people of their status needed a full-time chauffeur. Especially in formal occasions, the status of those who drove themselves would drop by a notch. This had nothing to do with wealth, but a matter of style. Chen Zhao didn't mind, but he still respected Alex's suggestion. Sitting in the back seat, Alex handed him a document. This is Madame Jane Fankel's message. Take a look. Is she only 45? Chen Zhao asked, confused. He had thought that Lady Jane Arunkel would be a little older than him. Chapter 2608. The men in black lowered their guns one after another. Once there was a first, there would be a second. Even these people would follow blindly. Some of them were Jane Fankel's trusted followers. Thus they were the first to lower their guns. Mr. Chun, please give me 3 days. Sure. If you can give me a satisfactory answer in 3 days, we'll continue working together. Then Chen Zhao and Alex drove away. In the car, Chen Zhao asked, Alex, do you think she directed it herself? Alex shook her head. She wouldn't gamble with her company's reputation. After a pause, Alex added, I thought you'd kill someone. I've always been a pacifist. Alex glanced at Chen Zhao in disdain. After returning home, Portia stayed at home to take care of the kids. However, Chen Zhao realized that his long-absent assistant, Zephra, was also there. Zephra, you're back? When did you come back? Boss, Zephra greeted Chen Zhao with a smile. Zephra, did you go on a mission in the past few days? Portia was very curious about Zephra's deeds. You definitely don't want to know the whole process. Zephra still had a faint smile on her face. Did you kill someone? Zephra hesitated. She glanced at Chen Zhao silently, and then nodded. Wow. Impressive. Portia's passion had been ignited. After all, She had a normal life and desired to live a life beyond that. Her mind automatically filled in the gaps of Zephyr's passionate life. No matter what kind of bloody storm Zephyr was facing outside, he did not care. Here Zephyr was just an ordinary girl, hardworking and approachable. After lunch, Zephyr sat by the lake and dipped her bare feet into the water. Unlike the turbulent life outside, the life here made her feel peaceful and tranquil. Chun Zhao brought a glass of juice to Zephyr. Is it resolved? Zephyr hesitated for a moment and then shook her head. What's the situation this time? An extremely ferocious demonic dragon has massacred more than 10 human villages. He's extremely cunning. There's no pattern to the targets he chooses. He chooses them completely randomly, and they're very far away from each other. After he finishes massacring a village, he immediately leaves. My team members and I have been hunting him for a few months, and we've only encountered him once. Even if he has absolute strength, he won't come into direct contact with us. His footprints are all over the 5 continents. His actions should have angered the entire spirit world, right? This situation is no longer a dragon slayer's task. Are you willing to help? I really want to, but he didn't enter my territory, Chun Zhao said. In the spirit world, those who have the strength to do so all have the same thoughts as you. Only a few hot-headed spiritualists fantasized about the great cause of slaying dragons and gathered together to fight against the demonic dragon. They heavily injured the demonic dragon, while their entire army was annihilated. We, the dragon slayers, weren't able to make it in time for that battle. Chun Zhao could hear the complaint in Refer's voice. It seemed to be very dissatisfied with a master like Chun Zhao. He clearly had the ability to solve the problem, but he just stood by. Forget it. This is the last time I think that I've already quit the dragon slayers. If it's your request, I can help you once, Chun Zhao said. Refer lowered her head and thought for a long time. Are you really willing to help? Yes. Please help me destroy that demonic dragon. Sure. Tell me the demonic dragon's whereabouts. I'll pay close attention to it. As soon as I get accurate information, I'll tell you immediately. Okay. Also, can you bring me with you? I want to kill that demonic dragon with my own hands. Other than hatred and honor, is there any other reason? For us dragon slayers, there are some things that we can never erase, such as the dragon slayer mark. Refra lifted a dragon tattoo on her arm. It exuded the aura of the dragon race. It was very faint, but it was real. Every dragon slayer is actually a descendant of the dragon race. It's just that it's almost impossible for us to activate the dragon race's bloodline. However, we can temporarily borrow the power of the dragon race by bathing in dragon blood. Zephyr rolled down her sleeves. If the conditions allow, I can agree to it. Refra had quit the Dragon Slayer organization, but it wasn't difficult for her to obtain information about the Dragon Slayers. After all, a lot of information was shared among the Dragon Slayers. Even though she had left the Dragon Slayer organization, she could still obtain the corresponding information through her former companions. But I don't believe there's such a crazy dragon, Chun Zhao said. From his actions, he's an extremely calm dragon. He doesn't only know how to kill. Killing for the sake of killing isn't in line with human nature. Human nature didn't just refer to a person's personality. It was the nature of all intelligent races. If the other was a violent dragon who didn't know how to think, he might only kill to satisfy his desires. But he was a dragon who could escape from the dragon slayers and the entire spiritual world many times. He didn't seem like an idiot who did things recklessly. I think he definitely has his own goal, but he hasn't revealed it yet. We've suspected that he has other goals, but we haven't found out yet. Chun Zhao rubbed his chin and thought for a long time. His purpose in doing this is completely like the action of a lunatic. However, he is not a lunatic. His seemingly clueless actions might be, because he has put his purpose out in the open, but it has been ignored by everyone. Zephyr frowned. On the surface, you mean, his goal is to provoke the entire spiritual world? That's the only possibility I can think of. What's in it for him? Does he want to die? Maybe. I'm not a smart person either. These are just my guesses.